If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast at BeBullish.com with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy.
Download and subscribe
at BeBullish.com.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Find this kind of straight talk and candor extremely refreshing. Fetterman will likely gain more national support for calling out the excesses of a radicalized Democrat Party. Meanwhile, California Governor Gavin Newsom, the man who would be president, is refusing to say whether he's running for president or not. Also claims that he hates political liars. He said during a recent appearance on Meet the Press, "Nothing I dislike more than the politician who sits there and lies to you. We're all just going to sit there rolling our eyes saying, give me a break. I'm focusing on Prop 50. I'm focusing on fair and free elections and to extend the future. There's an alignment. You have big enough why. You have what and now." The guy barely makes sense. You need a moment, and that moment presents itself in a year and a half. We'll see what happens. I guess what he's saying is he's focusing on trying to get a favorable redistricting out of California so that he can run for president. But better yet, let's listen to Governor Gavin Newsom himself.
You've said, as we've discussed, you are considering a run for president, and you've said you'll make a decision about whether to run for president after the midterms.
Yeah, I mean,
Governor, let me ask you, why do you want to be president?
I don't. I'm not suggesting I am. I'm saying, in response to someone talked about it, and I hate when nothing I dislike more than the politician that sits there and lies to you. And we all just sit there rolling our eyes going, give me a break. So as it relates to that, there's nothing on the right. I'm focused on Prop 50. I'm focusing on fair and free elections. And to the extent fate, the future, there's an alignment, you have a big enough why, you have a what and a how, you meet a moment, and that moment presents itself in a year and a half, we'll see what happens.
It's fitting that Newsom would say that he detests political liars, then immediately go into a pretentious diatribe about fate, future, who, what, when, where, why of his running for office. Newsom's faux authenticity isn't going to play well with voters, in my opinion.
This shrimp and coconut sauce is divine. What's your secret?
Goya coconut milk.
How does it taste so good?
It's all in that real coconut flavor and that rich, creamy texture.
What about thickeners and added sugars?
None. Just smooth, coconutty goodness.
What can I make with it?
From curries to sweet treats like coconut flan, the possibilities are endless.
Goya coconut milk. Take your cooking to the next level. No question about it. Find it in the Goya section of your local grocery store. If it's Goya, it has to be good.
This National Foster Care Month, Marine Toys for Tots is providing hope to children who need it most. Staff Sergeant James Caldwell, who grew up in foster care himself, shares that while handing out gifts at a Toys for Tots distribution event, a little girl looked up at him, reached into her bag, pulled out a stuffed animal and said, "Someone needs to make sure you get a toy too." That simple gesture embodies the heart of Marine Toys for Tots, ensuring every child, including those in foster care, experiences the kindness that can transform their future. Visit toysfortots.org today.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back in the Stone Zone. Podcaster and cartoonist, the Dilbert creator, Scott Adams, is now receiving cancer treatment following the direct intervention of President Donald Trump himself after Adams was being forced to languish and potentially die prematurely because of having to deal with the health care bureaucracy in this country. Adams, who's been here in the Stone Zone a number of times, wrote in an appeal on X to the president, "As many of you know, I have metastasized prostate cancer. My health care provider, Kaiser of North California, has approved my application to receive a newly FDA-approved drug called Pluvicto. But unfortunately, they dropped the ball in scheduling the brief IV to be administered, and I haven't been able to fix that. I am declining very fast." Adams publicly pleaded with President Trump himself to help pursue this therapy that would give him a, quote, fighting chance to stick around on this planet just a little bit longer, adding that it is not a cure, but it does give good results for many people. President Trump responded with a Truth Social post saying that he is on it. And it was reported that Adams started his experimental treatment today. Now, my wife is a survivor of cancer, and hope and attitude are keys to beating this horrific illness. President Donald Trump has stepped into a leadership position here, getting involved to ensure that Scott Adams, the cartoonist, received the cancer treatment he deserves, and once again shows what a compassionate side Donald Trump has. After all, President Trump is a people's person. He loves his fellow man. He gets strength from the American people, unlike, say, Hillary Clinton. When she was the first lady, I saw a memo that was circulated to the Clinton White House staff that said, if you bump into the first lady in the hallways or in the byways of the White House or the old executive office building, you are to avert your eyes and never look at her directly, and under no circumstances are you to speak to the first lady unless you are spoken to. I think that came across in her candidacy. This is somebody who doesn't have time for the American people. Donald Trump, on the other hand, sprung into action not because he wanted a fancier house or a better plane or international acclaim. He already had that as the leading capitalist and businessman potentially in the entire world. He ran for president. He came down that golden escalator to give hope to the beleaguered American people who, like him, were tired of watching their country being ravaged by globalism. President Trump has similarly now stepped up to give hope to Scott Adams, who, God willing, will be with us a little longer. All because of President Trump's noble intervention to ensure he receives the cancer treatment that he desperately needs. This is our president. I'm sure all of you join me in praying for Scott Adams, the cartoonist. He has a great podcast. I follow him on X. I urge you to do the same. But above all, prayer has power. I saw it in my own life. I saw it with my own wife's struggle with cancer. So please join me in praying for our friend Scott Adams. This is Roger Stone. You're listening to the Stone Zone right here on the Red Apple Audio Networks, and we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome. You are re-entering the Stone Zone. Well, it's a very familiar story. We call it judicial tyranny. Once again, a federal judge has blocked the deployment of National Guard troops to the city of Portland by the Trump administration. U.S. District Court Judge Karen J. Immergut, a Biden appointee, of course, issued a ruling on Sunday claiming President Trump has no authority to send the Guard into Portland, extending a preliminary injunction against the Trump administration after hearing 3 days of arguments in the state of Oregon versus Donald Trump. This is, once again, a government overreach by one branch of government. I checked the Constitution this morning. No place does it say that the executive authority to secure the safety of the American people is vested entirely in the courts. This is a classic case, once again, the same liberal judges who objected to Donald Trump arresting and deporting illegals, the same federal judges who insisted he had no authority to negotiate new tariff deals for the United States. This is the last line of defense because the president has a mandate voted for in the last election. In this case, DOJ attorneys have argued that the sustained violence from far-left terror groups like Antifa against the ICE facility in Portland, and that the presence of the Guard is also needed to secure the facility for ICE agents to be able to do their job and deport the illegals. The courts, along with the local left-wing government and law enforcement of Portland, you can imagine how woke they are apparently sympathetic to Antifa and downplay the impact of violent agitators are having in their efforts to impede law enforcement. Law enforcement have essentially sat back and allowed Antifa to commit acts of terrorism against ICE, that is local law enforcement, with reports alleging that law enforcement are even helping to usher Antifa into safe houses that serve as bases for their terror attacks and plots against ICE agents who are merely doing their job. I have written extensively that it may be time for President Trump to take a page out of one of his favorite president's book. That would be Andrew Jackson. Old Hickory circumvented the courts entirely. In fact, all of the founding fathers had waited around for insulated, unelected, unaccountable, politically connected lawyers in robes to rubber stamp their revolution against the British. We'd still be bowing to the crown. President Trump needs to do whatever it takes, in my opinion, to restore order. Antifa is not a figment of our imagination. It is a violent terrorist group. My question is quite simple. If, like the former FBI director Christopher Wray insists that they're not a group, who's paying for those pallets of bricks? Who's paying for the flatbed trucks? Who's paying for the buses bringing protesters to various locations? Who's paying for the lawyers who immediately show up at the local jail in the rare occasion that these violent terrorists are arrested for their actions? It is yet another example of judicial tyranny, but it's about delay. You see, the left knows that once they get through a local left-wing trial court, and even if they get through a local appeals court, like the one in, say, D.C. or in New York, they ultimately will get to the U.S. Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court have recognized the executive authority of Donald Trump to carry out the mandate of the last election. Meanwhile, all eyes, of course, are on the New York City mayor's race. This is a race which has caught the national imagination. It is shocking, I think, for many people across the country to recognize that the old Democrat Party, the party of Robert F. Kennedy, who was the U.S. Senator from New York, the party of his brother John F. Kennedy, who was a hard-line anti-communist, the party of Harry Truman, the president who is essentially the founder of the State of Israel, has nominated a candidate who embraces a radical ideology that is not simpatico with the history of New York. To put it another way, did you ever think that the once great Democrat Party of New York City would select and endorse a candidate for mayor who embraces the ideology of those who attacked the World Trade Center on 9/11? The Democrats' candidate, Zohran Mamdani, very recently campaigned with one of the co-conspirators, an imam, who was the head of a mosque, who was a co-conspirator, an indicted co-conspirator in the bombings at the World Trade Center. Now, Mamdani has campaigned with a transgendered rabbi that claims Mamdani is a fighter for affordability and safety. The ad was presented by Jews for Racial and Economic Justice in some kind of an attempt to make Mamdani seem more palatable to New York City. This transgender rabbi, Abby Stein, who is rabidly anti-Israel and was even hauled out of a Biden White House event after protesting loudly against the state of Israel, was there appearing with Mamdani. So this bizarre character is not representative of New York City Jews by any stretch of the imagination. Meanwhile, Rabbi Angela Buchdahl, a major figure in the U.S. reform movement, expressed dismay in the rise of Mamdani and said it was a sign that New York City is becoming more hostile and unwelcoming to Jews. Buchdahl specifically said, "Some fear that in the most Jewish city in the world, we're becoming strangers once again. I share many of those fears." Mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani has contributed to the mainstreaming of some of the most abhorrent anti-Semitism, not only demonizing Israelis, but echoing age-old anti-Semitic tropes that Jews across the world are the root cause of all problems. So it's true that Mamdani wants to globalize the intifada, as he said, has said that Bibi Netanyahu, the leader of Israel, is a war criminal, and has said he would support Netanyahu's arrest if he came to New York City, say for the United Nations. He's expressed antipathy towards the state of Israel, but none of these facts seem to cause the Jewish revolt among voters when it comes to Mamdani that you would expect. It's really quite extraordinary. studying the polling, you see that Mamdani continues to win a plurality of Jewish voters in what was called the most Jewish city in the world. I did get into a little tiff with Laura Loomer this week. She's an old friend of mine. Just because you disagree with her, particularly on matters at large, doesn't mean you're anti-Semitic. To be very, very clear, I'm a strong supporter of the state of Israel. I think the president made the right decision by launching the surgical strikes on the Iranians' nuclear weapons development program, as opposed to committing boots to the ground. I do think the Muslim Brotherhood should be declared a violent, illegal terrorist organization and dismantled. And I have extreme hostility to both Hamas and Hezbollah. But I agree with President Richard Nixon, who said that an American president must always put America first. Now, most of the time, as Nixon said, when you put America first, you are putting Israel first because our interests are so carefully aligned. On the other hand, if you disagree with Ms. Loomer, well, that must mean you're an anti-Semite, which, of course, is categorically untrue. Some have suggested that she's paid by the Mossad or by Israel to take the position she takes. I've made no such claim. I do think there are certain people who are funding some of her expressions on social media, but I was never speaking specifically, as others have, about the Jewish people or Israel. That's kind of the best way to sum that up. Meanwhile, the Trump administration will end up paying half of the SNAP benefits. SNAP used to be called food stamps. They changed the name several years ago. The Trump administration has come to a determination regarding these benefits with the government shut down, telling a Rhode Island judge that they will be facing half of the regular amount of SNAP benefits to recipients amidst this ongoing shutdown. The Trump administration told Judge Jack McConnell in a court filing that they would not be raiding $4 billion from the Child Nutrition Program in order to make the full SNAP food stamp payments through the month of November. SNAP, which is short for Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, gives food stamps to some 42 million Americans, showing exactly how the welfare state has spiraled out of control in the age of big government. Obviously, some of the people who receive this assistance desperately need it, are in a position where they're unable to work and provide for themselves. But Elon Musk proved in his Doge investigation and analysis of federal spending that there has been not millions, not billions, but trillions of dollars of waste, fraud, and abuse in our federal spending. Right now, of course, the whole shutdown is centered around the fact that the Democrats want to add $1.5 trillion more in new spending. The Republicans, who are not exactly bold, are prepared to let the government go forward at the current levels of funding, when what is really needed are deep, deep cuts in wasteful federal spending. The Trump administration plans now to use $4.65 billion from a contingency fund that was appropriated by Congress for November benefits that will be obligated to cover 50% of the eligible households under the SNAP program. This actually follows a precedent of previous presidential administrations using this emergency contingency fund to keep the SNAP program afloat during this period of government shutdown. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who I think is among President Trump's very best appointees, a libertarian and outside-the-box thinker, a supporter of gold, a man who I think in his heart of hearts would like to repeal the 1913 Federal Income Tax Act, said that the SNAP benefits should resume as soon as this coming Wednesday. This is the Trump administration solving a problem, again, that was caused by Democrats. The Democrats are keeping the government shut down as a way to gain leverage, cause chaos in the country, and try to create pressure to force President Trump into greater wasteful spending. This is what's causing the food insecurity of millions of people depending on these SNAP programs. The Democrats are proving they're not the party for the poor or the working people. They just see poor people as pawns who can be exploited for their inside the Beltway games. Unlike previous government shutdowns, the polling shows that most people understand that this shutdown belongs to Senator Chuck Schumer of New York, and that the president is not a man to trifle with. I think it's highly unlikely that he will be the first to fold. Again, President Trump acting against the stereotype of moving very quickly to try to get half of the food stamp benefits to those who really, really need them. In the meantime, I grow increasingly tired of watching Democrats insist that because he supports the prosecution of New York's epically corrupt New York Attorney General Letitia James, because he's pointed out that Senator Adam Schiff has claimed full-time legal residence in 2 different states, something one cannot actually do under the law, and because he insists on the prosecution of former FBI Director James Comey for lying under oath to Congress about material matters like the Russian collusion hoax. Beyond that, James Comey is arguing that he can't be prosecuted because he questions the authority of the U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan, who brought indictments against both he and Letitia James. In other words, he doesn't want to argue with the substance of his criminal indictment. This isn't about justice and revenge or retribution, folks. It's about accountability and justice. I'm Roger Stone, and I'll be right back. And, of course, President Trump himself, writing this past week on X, he says James Comey needs to be cuffed and perp-walked just as Roger Stone was. Both Stone and Comey were indicted for making false statements to Congress, and Stone also had his house raided by armed SWAT team of FBI agents early in the morning, while Comey was allowed to turn himself in at his leisure at a later date. Equal justice. Thank you, Mr. President, for recognizing the outrageousness of this moment. It's interesting that the judge in my case said that I was not allowed to argue that I was selectively prosecuted or that the prosecution of me was politically motivated. So will the judge in Letitia James' case in the Eastern District of Virginia reach such a ruling in her case as well? Somehow I rather doubt it. See, there are different rules for Democrats.
I turned off news altogether.
I hate to say it, but I don't trust much of anything.
It's the rage bait.
It feels like it's trying to divide people.
If we got clear facts, maybe we can calm down a little.
NBC News brings you clear reporting. Let's meet at the facts. Let's move forward from there. NBC News, reporting for America.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. We're back in the Stone Zone. Remember how they screamed when it was reported that President Richard Nixon had an enemies list? It was actually John Dean, the White House counsel, who blurted that out on national television during the televised Watergate committee hearings. But it now appears that the Biden Justice Department had just such a list, and yes, I was among those on it. So where's the outrage from the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN about the extra-constitutional DOJ operation called Arctic Frost? There's no probable cause. Americans were targeted for surveillance, harassment, and incarceration in a political operation designed to destroy the opposition to Joe Biden's administration. Arctic Frost was not an investigation. It was an atrocity disguised as law. This was the conscious act of political terror and betrayal. Imagine waking to the sound of 29 heavily armed FBI agents pounding on your door at 6 a.m., or your dog's terrified, your wife perp-walked for CNN's camera crew, your privacy stripped away, your good name obliterated by improperly motivated, politicized hoodlums who have a fake indictment here. Imagine being illegally spied on, bankrupted, humiliated, and vilified for standing by your beliefs. The entire investigation by special counsel Jack Smith was the greatest single abuse of power since the Russian collusion hoax itself. The Biden Justice Department, kind of true to form, just as they spied on President Trump's presidential campaign in 2016, we played that earlier in the show, has now been learned that they were spying on 8 elected Republican U.S. senators.
This is a violation of the Separations of Power Act of the U.S. Constitution. This is something you would expect in Nazi Germany or Soviet Russia. The government actually admits to access all of the polling data, telling the FBI, the Justice Department, who the senators called, when, and for how long they spoke. This is a monstrous violation of privacy and a direct assault
on the separation of powers. No warrants were filed to justify it. There's no legitimate predicate to support it. There was no probable cause. This was a political hit job. Nearly 100 Republicans or conservative-linked groups, including myself, General Michael Flynn, members of Congress like Congressman Scott Perry and others were targeted in this unbelievable operation. The architects of Arctic Frost deserve no sympathy. They have no defense. We should have known this was coming. I remember seeing an interview with Joe Biden, and they asked him how he felt about a rematch with Donald Trump. This was shortly after Trump had announced that he was running again, but it was not clear that he would be the Republican nominee, a nomination he won in a walk. Biden smiled broadly and said, "We're not going to let him run." And that's precisely what they did. So Donald Trump had to overcome not only a re-election campaign, a most improbable re-election campaign, but a tsunami of lawfare against him, in which they tried to destroy him financially, keep him off the ballot in 50 states, send him to prison, all in the name of holding power. Arctic Frost is the greatest single scandal in American history. It makes Watergate look like a milk-fed puppy. I'm Roger Stone. This is the Stone Zone, where we talk politics 5 days a week. Thanks for joining us, and until we meet again, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?
It's easy to get stuck reaching for the same familiar fruits and vegetables, even when you know a colorful variety is key. Balance of Nature's fruits and veggie supplements don't replace fruits and vegetables, but it makes it easy to add more variety to what you already eat. With 31 ingredients that are whole fruits and vegetables, switching it up is easy because we've already taken care of the hard part. Go to balanceofnature.com and get a free fiber and spice supplement, plus 35% off your first set as a new preferred customer by using discount code POD.